Sorry, I'm just checking something. It appears that someone tried to spam the message board, and I'm a little confused how this happened because it's not possible, I think, to register new users. So it should not have been possible for that person to even have a user account in order to post. So it's a little strange and a little bit concerning. But they've been removed, so hopefully it's not a problem anymore. A little strange, a little bit anyway, welcome to Tuesday's office hour. As usual, please share any questions you might have in the live chat, and I'll also be looking at the discussion board to answer questions there. Just opening up some of the questions on the discussion board. A brief announcement. I posted a video today introducing the PW Mini project and talking about some of the unique challenges in that mini project. So I mentioned that I would be uploading that, and it is now uploaded. Okay, I think I have everything open now. I'm actually going to jump to a question I thought was a very good question. I uploaded it. I see no one else has, but I thought it was a very good question. In the video on classes and object-oriented programming, I defined a reduce method for reducing a fraction to its simplified form. And in that reduce method, I first of all mutate the object, but also return self. And the question asker said this seems redundant, first because it will run regardless, secondly because the method alters everything it needs on the object itself. So in other words, you're right. That is unusual to for the method of an object to both mutate the object and return a value for the object itself. There are, however, examples of this behavior in some widely used packages that guided my choice here. For example, in scikit-learn, estimators and transformers, i.e. objects which are fit to data and then used to make predictions or transform input data, Both follow this pattern because we often will want to fit an estimator to training data and subsequently make a prediction. So for example, if I have some model equals like a logistic or linear regression estimator, I might have a pattern like this. Linear regression is a class defined in scikit-learn, so we would have to import it. By fitting it to the training data, I mutate the model, updating its internal parameters, attributes, according to the procedure for performing linear regression. However, in order for me to be able to chain a predict method onto a fit method, the fit method must return a linear regression object, i.e. the model itself. It's very common for object methods to return self to allow us to chain together various methods. We'll see this a lot in pandas when we might do a series of transformations and aggregations using group by and apply methods. Also, we can interpret or we can rewrite the second line in the above example as model.fit training data, training labels, predict test data, where the first set of parens condenses to model in its mutated, fitted form, i.e. the second line becomes model.predict test data after the fitting is performed. In the example from the lecture, it's not clear whether reduce is an operation similar to addition or multiplication, i.e. it should return a new rational object, or a mutation of a rational object. that updates its attributes. If we view the reduce method as a mutation, i.e., it changes the rational object, then this lets us do things like if we want to do things like rational for 3 plus rational for eighths dot reduce, must return self at the end of reduce. If we don't, then we'll get a type error probably. Telling us there's no definition for blank or a star between rational and none type. By including return self, rational for 8 dot reduce returns a rational object, allowing us to proceed with the multiplication. So a very long answer, but I think it's a very important and somewhat subtle question and requires quite a bit of unpacking. I really like this question. This is going to get referred to what I posted the other day. Actually, this can be salvaged. So we'll say IP question 5 sieve encountering type error during modulo division. I'll edit this. We'll include this question. So this does include a question. Why is this giving me a type error? So and then we will take this code, format it. And cool. I'm not going to do anything with this because it seems like someone's already answered it. Let's see here. In the DSIO notebook, there's a few times we use the code CAT. I'm not sure what this is doing, and searching the internet's not giving me much information. Anyone know what this is doing? As hinted at the bottom of the notebook, there notebook, and as briefly mentioned in the lecture video, final lecture video from that notebook. Several places in the notebook we use bash commands, noted by a exclamation point. Among the bash commands we use are wget, ls, cat, maybe head, and maybe some others. Bash is a program used in Unix-like operating systems called a shell. This class doesn't teach bash, and you don't need to know bash to succeed in this class. However, bash is very useful because it's one of the primary ways in which we interact with Unix-like operating systems, e.g. Mac OS or Linux, which are very common in the data science community. The cat command specifically prints out the contents of a file. So when we cat sample.txt, we print out the contents of sample.txt. The reason it's called cat is that it concatenates the file contents to standard out, which is a special channel for output in Unix-like operating systems. When we use print in Python, we are also sending whatever we print to standard out. In other words, cat in bash is essentially doing the same thing as cat, say, file name, doing the same thing as with open file name r as f, print f.read would do in Python. So expanding on this person's answer, when we initialize a point object, e.g. by doing point to 2, the init method is automatically called. When we initialize a point object, we want to set its x and y attributes. That is why we write something like point to 2, because we want to set x to 2 and y to 2. Other than setting the x and y attributes, we don't want to do anything else when we initialize a point object. Your init method has an additional argument, other, which does not logically correspond with anything we would want to use to describe a point in a 2D plane, i.e. this other argument doesn't represent anything meaningful. Therefore, we should leave it out. The reason you encounter an error is because any time we call a function, we must supply all of its positional arguments. Your init method has 3 positional arguments, x, y, and other. However, when you write point to 2, you're only supplying 2 of those 3. X and y. Technically, init has 4 positional arguments, but all methods have the self argument, and it's automatically supplied whenever we call an object's methods. We don't supply all the positional arguments to a function. We'll raise I believe it's a type error. Let me check. Yep. Type error telling us that n arguments were required, but we only passed m arguments. Let's see here. Mark false. bool list P for I in range 2 to the length of bool list. If I times P is less than or equal to the length of the bool list I times P equals false. It's a little unclear what this question is asking, but it seems like you believe that mark false is well, it seems like you want only true and false values in your output. Your mark false function only mutates certain elements of bool list to be false. Since nothing happens with the other elements, it must be the case that bool list starts out with numbers for at least some values, i.e. your bool list is not, in fact, a list of Boolean values in the first place. Your bool list is being supplied by your list true function. You may want to check what the output of list true 6 is and check that it matches your expectations for what you want. IP exercise 5, mark false and the list true. Yeah. Quite frankly, there's still a lot of questions on the message board that are basically duplicates or aren't well described by their titles or aren't very descriptive in the questions. But I'm sort of running out of steam for moderating this myself. I think it's a bit of a shame that the discussion board is getting cluttered, which makes it more difficult to find answers or useful information by searching the message board. But there's just way too many of you for me to moderate on my own. So unfortunately, that seems like it's just the way it's going to be. This is a really confusing. Way of formatting this. Get the following error, max items. Yep. So greater error. Let's try and find the old answer where I explain how to interpret errors from the grader. Oh. Um, a format. Is there? Great. This is the kind of thing I'm looking for. There have been previous questions about interpreting error messages from the grader that I have answered in the past. After reading the above answer, you should try again to interpret the error message you've received from the grader with respect to your solution. As a hint, I'll point out that the dummy solution for this problem is shown. I need a actual server. Contains 17 pairs of numbers. Likewise, the grader tells us that there is a max items and min items of 17 for the solution, i.e., the solution contains exactly 17 elements, and that those elements themselves contain exactly 2 numbers. You can see that from the grader error after it says failed validating max items in schema, and it shows us the schema or format of the solution. Just want to double check that there is a dummy answer for this question. I'm fairly certain there is, but for some reason this person simply has their answer is simply repeated. It's not really clear why. It looks like for some reason your solution repeats itself after the 17th item, giving you a total of 34 items. I'm not sure why this is happening, since you only shared the result and not the code that generated it. Oh, no, he did. If LL prime, list of prime append number, loop. I'm sorry, if prime, if LL prime. Oh, he probably just ran this twice. Looking at your code, your function mutates a global data structure. List 1 and list 2, which are defined outside of the function itself. You run the function multiple times, it's going to cumulatively append things to those lists, extending their length further and further. Let's see. I also I posted an answer to a question on the message board the other day. I don't know that I'll be able to find it. But I had an answer that I posted the other day where, yes, it was here. So for more information about why this can cause problems, see this answer to a question about the PW Mini project. Yeah, so it's good practice most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, any name that you use in a function should be defined within the scope of the function. So if you use a variable, it should either be something that you create in the function, in the body, or it should be an argument of the function. This person, there's no reason that they couldn't define. So they define these two lists, list 1 and list 2, that they use within this function. There's no reason to define them outside the function. They could easily define them here at the very beginning of the function. And defining them outside the function is dangerous because each time they run this function, they're going to be appending a bunch of stuff to list 1 and list 2. But these lists don't get reset by running the function. So if we run the function once, we populate these lists. And if we run it again, we append even more stuff onto those lists. And if we run it again, we have now 3 copies of our output in that list. So it's very likely that this person ran this function and then ran it again and then passed the output to the grader, or ran this function, passed this function to the grader ran it, and the content got doubled. Yeah, so we have to be careful about mutating global variables. So this student asked for the solution for the output of PW2, which is exactly 2 things, a string and a number. Do not ask for solutions on the message board. And if someone is asking you for a solution, do not share it. Yeah, don't post things like this. I've talked a lot about over the last few office hours, and also now I've made this post on the message board about like how to ask for help in a way that is not cheating. And I'm not going to give warnings anymore. I'm simply out of warnings. I've done a lot of warning. So from now on, those posts get closed and or deleted with no more commentary. I've given a ton of commentary already on my view of how these kinds of requests play out. And I'm just not going to tolerate them anymore. Okay, so on to the question. PW3 postal totals, matching practice in scripts with code in practices. I think this person got their backticks mixed up. They're just missing one. Practice in scripts with code and practices. Yes, correct. However, we must first deal with the repeated values of code and practices. Also correct. We want alphabetically first postal codes. So they do this. If practice code and postal code, well, these 2 lines are exactly the same. So this is probably not going to work. You have the correct understanding of the problem statement. However, the code block you posted will not solve the problem. The reason is that both of our branches in the logic do the same thing. Your code is equivalent to, we just took out this condition altogether. In other words, your code is currently simply taking whichever postal code. Oh, this is also not what we want. We don't want scripts practice. This also doesn't make sense. This shouldn't work. So first of all, scripts practice should give us a key error, because scripts are not even a key error. What kind of error do we get if we try to index a list using a key? A type error. Should be a list. And we cannot index a list using strings. Rather, we want to set practice postal practice code to the postal code for that practice. Secondly, both of our branches in the logic do the same thing. We should instead update the code to do the following. One, if the practice code is not in the practice postal dictionary, we should initialize it. We should set the value at the key practice code to be equal to that practice's postal code. 2. Two. There we go. If the practice code is in the practice postal dictionary, we should check whether this practice's postal code is alphabetically before the value currently stored at practice postal practice code. If it is, then we should update the value to now be equal to this practice's postal code. Otherwise, we do nothing. Currently, your solution is trying to jump one step ahead by attempting to perform or to join the scripts data to the practice data. As you said in your first sentences, we can't perform that join until we resolve the ambiguities of the postal codes in the list of practices. Let's see. This question was posted a while ago, so I'm going to say, additionally, it may be helpful to watch the intro to the PW mini project intro video I uploaded earlier today. So let's grab the link to that. Okay, last 5 minutes of the office hour. We've got maybe time for one more question. Y'all in the live chat have been awfully quiet. Do you have any questions for me? I'm very happy to answer live questions as well. Exercise 5 of, I assume this is meant to be VC. To update the center point of the cluster, should I calculate the mean of all points? Yes, exactly. You should calculate the average X position and the average Y position, and that's where your new center should go. That is exactly correct. I was just looking at this answer I provided to a question about that problem. And another thing I pointed out was that after we update a cluster, its points should be empty. And the reason is that once we update the center of a cluster, the point assignments are sort of no longer valid. And the idea here is like, if we have two clusters and we've assigned a bunch of points to both of them, based on whether those points are closer to the center of cluster 1 or cluster 2, once we update where those centers are, it's possible that some of those points should be assigned to the other cluster now. So once we update the centers, those assignments are sort of outdated. So we should clear out all the points from the points attribute. But yes, the center should be updated to the mean X position and the mean Y position of all the points in the points attribute. Um, So the format of this person's answer is correct, which is why the grader returns a score and not an error. However, you have the incorrect values for answering the question. Let's see here. So, name. List for name and BNF names. Groups equals list groups. I don't know. What's that? That's going to give you a list of all the names. I don't know why they would do that, but okay. For script and scripts, if script BNF name in groups, name equals script BNF name. Okay, items equals script items. Dict name items. I don't know what this BNF names is. I don't know where this comes from. But they probably don't want this. And here they're just replacing items. The logic or your solution code hinges on you, or uses a dictionary keyed by the BNF names with values equal to the number of items in a single prescription for a given BNF name. In other words, the values of your dictionary will be the number of items in the last prescription for, with a particular BNF name. This will not give us the maximal item. Instead, we must construct groups in the dictionary of the items prescribed in in all the descriptions. This means we'll probably want the values of our dictionary to be lists containing the items, number of items prescribed. We'll append a new item quantity on each step of the iteration. After that, we'll need to calculate the total items prescribed in each BNF name group before finally selecting the group with the maximum total items prescribed. I'm going off of memory of what this question asks, so I'm going to quickly check. This will be the last question I answer for today. I don't want VC, I want PW. Max item. Calculate item totals prescribed for each BNF name. Yep. What is the most commonly prescribed BNF name in our data? Okay, cool, yes. That is what I said. Please do not ask for uh, complete solutions on the message board. So the output is the solution. Okay, so they saw my message. I don't need to put this in all bold. Cool. Okay, so that's it for today. There will be more office hours tomorrow, of course, and I'll see you there. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.